Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be recommending 5 spring reads for you guys. These are all books that give me just spring vibes, new birth, growing things, new opportunities, change, life. All of these books kind of have those themes in common, and I have mostly fantasy and one classic. But before we go ahead and get on into the recommendations, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new bookish content. I post new content every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday, and sometimes other days throughout the week. Also, don't forget to check down in the description box below for links to all of my social medias, my Buddy Read Discord, and my Patreon, where you can be entered into winning book giveaways from me. The first book is a classic, and I feel like it is just the epitome of spring, and that is The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgkin Burnett. First off, I love, love, love this edition. I think it's so cute and so pretty. But if you are not familiar with The Secret Garden or have never read it, it follows a girl named Mary Lennox who lived in India, and she's British, and she ends up losing her parents and has to move back to England to live with her uncle. And her uncle lost his wife not that long ago, and he has really entered into like this deep depression, and he has been grieving over her for a long, long time. He's hardly ever home, and Mary is kind of left to her own devices, and she ends up finding this secret garden and takes it upon herself to try and bring this garden back to life. And this book just symbolizes that entire theme of dead things coming alive, because Mary always felt unloved and unwanted and is dealing with the loss of her parents, and the uncle's dealing with the loss of his wife, and it is just them learning how to live again and love again, seeing new opportunities to grow as human beings and start new relationships. And then we have all of the beautiful imagery of this gorgeous garden just growing and thriving with the new animals and the flowers blooming, and just how that can just revive one's spirit in itself. And it's just a good, charming, heartwarming book, and definitely one of my favorite classics, and ones that I would definitely recommend to read during the springtime. The next book is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This is the only Sarah J. Maas book that I own, and it was gifted to me by a friend years ago. And I did own some of her other books, but I ended up unhauling them. Unfortunately, she's just not an author that I connect with, really. But I actually did like this book, and I treat it as a standalone because I really dislike the sequel. And I can read this as a standalone. It has a perfectly good plot arc, and I actually really did like it. If you're not familiar with this book, it follows a girl named Feyre, and Feyre is basically the breadwinner for her family. She has some younger siblings that really don't contribute anything, and she is the one that goes out hunting and foraging for food for her family to survive. And one day she accidentally kills a beast in the woods, and it was actually a fae that was changed into a beast, and the fairy king from the spring court comes to take her away kind of as punishment for killing another fae. And obviously Feyre didn't mean to do this, so it has kind of like a Beauty and the Beast type feel to this book. Anyway, the reason that I think that this book has spring vibes is, number one, we start out the story in this like cold, bitter, wintry setting, and then Feyre is whisked away to the spring court. So the descriptions of the spring court are absolutely beautiful. There's just so much color and vivid descriptions and imagery and plants and flowers. So the setting alone is absolutely gorgeous. And then we have the story of Feyre, who is coming into her own identity, learning more about herself, learning to be more assertive, learning to be more independent. So she is growing as a person. And then we also have a relationship that develops between Feyre and Tamlin, who is the Fae King of the Spring Court. So we have that budding romance that grows into something over the course of the book. So not only do we literally have characters in the Spring Court, but we have just growth with our main character and growth of a romantic relationship, which I think embodies like all of the themes of spring. The next book is Sherwood by Megan Spooner. This is a YA Robin Hood gender bent retelling, and in this book, Robin of Locksley actually never was Robin Hood. Maid Marian is the one that becomes Robin Hood. She uses his identity to create Robin Hood, and the real Robin actually died fighting the Crusades. And Marian sees how the people are being oppressed and decides to take it upon herself to rectify it and become a vigilante, and she uses Robin's identity. So everyone thinks that Robin has returned from the dead and is a ghost masquerading around doing all of these things. So it's kind of like that theme of dead things coming back alive because Robin's technically dead. Then we also have Marion, who's changing as a person. She refuses to be held down by the social expectations of her time and her culture and wants to do what's right. So we see a lot of change in her. So I really just love how the ideas of spring tie into the story. And additionally, a lot of the setting takes place in Sherwood Forest. And when I think of spring, I think of green things and flowers and trees. And I just felt like that also fit into the idea of spring. Next, we have Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. This is a standalone adult fantasy book that does fit into his entire Cosmere, and there's just a lot of things about this book that remind me of spring. In this story, we follow two sisters, Vivenna and Ciri, and Vivenna, her whole life was told that she was going to have to go to Holadrin, this kind of neighboring country, and marry the God King in order to create an alliance between the two countries. And then we follow Ciri, her younger sister, who has kind of lived her life not under the shadow of this responsibility and kind of does whatever she wants. And when the day comes, their father cannot part with Vivenna and ends up sending Ciri in her place. In this world, we do have these gods that are reincarnated. So when I think of spring books, I think of the act of reincarnation and dead things coming alive once again. And one of our main characters is one of these returned or one of these gods. So we spend a lot of time in the point of view, in the head of a reincarnated god. So I just felt like that theme fit in with spring. The magic system in this book is really, really interesting. It follows something called breaths. Every single person is born with a certain amount of breaths. It's kind of like a manifestation of your soul, kind of like a sixth sense, and people can willingly transfer breaths to other people. And the more breaths you have, the more powerful you are, essentially. Breaths can create in you like high-end abilities such as seeing more vivid colors, hearing, and it can also be transferred to inanimate objects to help them become alive. Breaths can also be used to create lifeless, which are these awakened corpses. So this entire magic system revolves around bringing things to life through breath, in addition to being able to see more vivid colors. The gods that I mentioned earlier, like Lightsong, actually survive on the donation of people's breaths to them. So we have that kind of essence of life being given to the gods. Then we have the use of this breath, this life, to literally animate dead things, bring them alive. So this entire magic system, it just reminds me of spring and the theme, like I keep saying, of rebirth, newness. And finally, I wanted to mention Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb. So if you have not read the first two books in this series, I am going to be touching on some spoilers. So please make sure that you're checking the timestamps. But the reason that this book reminds me of spring is that in Royal Assassin, technically Fitz died, and they ended up having to use the whip magic to bring Fitz back alive. So we have that death coming to new life theme that I keep talking about. And then we also have Fitz having to help save the Six Duchies, help save the kingdom. And then we also have Verity and Ketchikan having to worry about if they're able to get a possible heir to ensure that the Farseer throne is secure. So Fitz does have a part in ensuring that life is created to make sure that the Farseer line continues. And then we have the whole stone dragons coming to life to help save the Six Duchies. And most of this book surrounds that elderling magic, surrounds how these stone dragons work, their history, the magic that went into them, and literally them coming back to life. And I just feel like this entire book, even though it was very slow at some points, really embodies the theme of spring, of new things, of rebirth, of new opportunities, death coming to life, because we see that in Fitz and we see that in the stone dragons, and it just holds a special place in my heart. Okay, you guys, that is it for 5 spring book recommendations. Let me know in the comments if you have any good book recommendations for spring, or if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them, and I will see y'all in another video soon. Goodbye!